Hi, I'm Rebecca Moore, and this is Art Watch Radio on WCHE 1520 every Wednesday from 1 to 1:30. So happy you could join us. Today, my guest in the studio is artist Sarah McRae Morton. Sarah's wistful paintings explore her own family folklore along with specific stories throughout history. Her debut solo exhibition at Somerville Manning Gallery is on view now and will run through December 15th. Welcome, Sarah. It is such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Your work has been written about and discussed so much, but I would love, if you could, to hear how you would describe your paintings in your own words.
There's a joke in there about paintings with a face for radio. The paintings are kind of, they pull from different sources. So they pull from history, they pull from imagination, they pull from observation, and try to synthesize all these different sources into something else.
So how did you get into painting? We were talking a little before the show about your family, and your family in general is a very talented group, so I'm sure that creative exploration was in your childhood?
Yeah, I started finger painting at the kitchen table like every other kid, and never stopped. And to give credit to my parents, they fostered this when they realized their kids would draw on the walls, so they put up reams of butcher paper in our house. So that was the beginning, and it's been continuous.
Wow, so they really kind of harbored that and let you kind of go nuts with it.
Yeah, I mean, they themselves are creative people, so I think they could relate.
So you grew up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. So I consider a lot of your paintings to have what I call like a rural magic to them. So you are obviously influenced by the people and the surroundings and the culture out there. Is that correct?
That's true. Yeah, it definitely seems a mystical place where things grow from the ground and spring from the earth, and people work closely to the land. And the Amish and Mennonite communities that I grew up surrounded by were my first subjects. And when I got to art school, some of my teachers said to me, "Why are you painting 19th century people?"
Really?
and I wasn't. I was painting what was around me, but that was perhaps the beginning of my interest in 19th century art, and because I related to that more than some contemporary work.
Yeah. Well, that kind of answers my next question was where does your love of history really come from? But if you grew up in a time that almost is frozen in time, I guess it kind of all stems from that.
Yeah, I think there's also, my family's originally from Appalachia, so there's a tradition of storytelling there, like sitting on the front porch or around a campfire and passing on stories. So I think that's part of why history is alive in my mind. Also from reading, one of my favorite quotes is by Faulkner, and he says, the past is not dead. It is not even past.
So you talked about, in Appalachia, the storytelling and things. Do you consider yourself a storyteller? That you're kind of expanding on that tradition in a more modern sense?
Yeah, I certainly think of myself as a narrative painter, but I'm kind of, that sense of my painting has progressed a little bit. I think when I was in art school, my paintings almost bordered on illustrative, but more and more, I think it's important to channel the idea of a story or the sense of a story rather than the facts of the story. So in researching, before I do paintings, I want to know the times and dates and figures and names and the facts of a story, but I don't know that it's important that they are evident in the final image.
It kind of maybe helps you put yourself into that story and situation so you can kind of understand it better, do you think?
What is it? I don't know. I suppose it's just collecting as much information about something as you can to be able to imagine. Yeah, I suppose.
So about 10-ish years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, you moved to Germany. And so I would imagine that the work and maybe your subject matter has changed since going over there, or has it not? Because the way I look at it is there's this old world fantasy to your Lancaster County paintings in the Amish community, but there's even more of that living in Germany. I mean, there's so much history over there, so that had to have opened up your world in very different ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine what I'd be doing if I weren't there, what paintings weren't made, because I went on a different trajectory. But yeah, I've been in Germany for 8 years, but have kept a foot in Lancaster County. And I think I find in both places, if the seed of making creative work is observation, both places make me an observer. So that they have in common. There's definitely a different metronome to daily life. One is horse hooves on pavement, the other is bikes on cobblestones. But yeah, they both shape my work, and it's a dream come true to live in a storied place where many of my favorite artists, developed and roam the streets. So that has been really rewarding to follow their footsteps. But yeah, it's changed my perspective on American identity and sense of place and sense of home. And so.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you brought up, the fact that some of your favorite painters, developed over there. And so art history and master painters in general are obviously such an inspiration for you. Sometimes you even reinterpret famous works of art in your own paintings. Who are some of the painters that are inspiring you right now?
Oof, the list is long. Yeah, the list is long. I mean, really, it starts with, I love studying cave paintings, for example, like the cave paintings of southern France, and I love studying petroglyphs of the Western United States. I love Egyptian art, so the list is long if it begins there, but recently I've had Millet next to my easel, Courbet, Van Gogh, always. Velasquez is somebody I return to a lot, and Kata Kowitz is one of my very favorites, and it's been one of my greatest joys to live in Cologne and be near a huge collection of her work and be able to study her life and work in the very place that she worked in Germany. So, yeah.
How did you start kind of reinterpreting these famous works into your own? Because when you look at them, they're clearly your own, and they're just very reminiscent of these other paintings, but they're still extremely identifiable as the original masterwork. Where did that all kind of stem from?
Well, originally I was, part of my training was copying art, so that is definitely something I've done to learn to paint. But I started using figures from art history as stand-ins, or kind of to make paintings cryptically about the Amish, because I didn't want to portray them as individuals who are recognizable. And so I use symbols from art history and some of the figures that would be recognizable in coffee mugs to kind of borrow the allegory from those paintings.
Interesting. So let's see. So in terms of your process, this is a very vague question, but how do you think you start a painting? Because there are so many stories and levels and details that go into your work. Do the stories come first, or kind of your visual idea of the painting?
It's hard to tell. I think there's always some spell or some moment of serendipity that inspires a painting. Just a weird visual coincidence of seeing something somewhere and it reminding me of something else I read, or I try to find the butterfly and chaos theory, I guess. But I begin paintings by scribbling notes and making little drawings, and reading and writing are definitely the beginning phases.
Do you work from photographs, or do you sketch before you paint? And
it's a little bit of everything. So sometimes if the painting calls for it, I'll take photographs and use those. Sometimes vignettes from art history or shape the composition.
You mentioned to me once going to the Natural History Museum in Cologne and sketching the animals over there, because animals play a huge part in your paintings as well.
This is true.
It must be different sketching from museum exhibitions versus sketching from life when you're home in Pennsylvania. Is it challenging, or is it actually kind of better because they're standing still this time?
Yeah, it's both. I mean, you can definitely... Well, from a natural history museum, you don't get the sense of an animal's movement. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're stuffed.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, they're both. It's still, you're sketching from...
But then it kind of gives you the opportunity. I mean, one of the paintings in the show has pronouncing this correctly, a quagga? Is that what it was?
A quagga, yeah.
A quagga, which is an extinct kind of zebra-horse mix, which you wouldn't have ever had the opportunity to sketch now because it, I think, became extinct in the late 1800s. Did you find that in the Natural History Museum?
Yeah, I saw one in Darmstadt, Germany, actually, but they also remind me of mules, so painted plenty of mules. Huh. Just put stripes on them. It'll do. Nobody knows what they look like anymore.
Well, I actually read this study recently that there's this university in Cape Town that is working on trying to breed them again, and they're crossbreeding different mules and zebras. So maybe you'll have the opportunity to paint one of those.
We'll see. I'm still hoping for the mammoth.
Exactly. Yeah. So you said that you found a mammoth and you were doing some paintings with that, right? I
found a mammoth in a museum. I did not.
Well, no. Yes. Let's correct that for the listeners. Not a real mammoth.
Perhaps one day, but yeah, the story of the mastodon skeleton that's in the painting by one of the Pennsylvania Academy of Arts founders has been this fixation of mine, and I went on a treasure hunt to find the original skeleton, which ended up in Germany in a strange twist of fate.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. So we have to take a quick break, but when we get back, we will be with artist Sarah McRae Morton. Welcome back to Art Watch Radio, WCHE, AM Radio 1520. This is Rebecca Moore, director of Somerville Manning Gallery, and my guest today is the painter Sarah McRae Morton, who has a debut solo exhibition at the gallery right now that runs through December 15th. For the second half of the show, I was hoping we could talk about your show in general in the gallery. Can you tell us a bit about the collection of paintings in the show, and is there a common thread that runs between them?
Yes, there are a few reoccurring themes in the paintings in this show that kind of are continued from past bodies of work and that I will probably still keep working on because I'm interested in the intersection of human curiosity and natural history and what happens when the two collide, but also the ideas of curiosity and voyeurism and how that shapes the world around us, but also what the seeds of curiosity or adventure or desperation that drive people to move and find sense of place and purpose and home.
The title of the exhibition is The Saw and the Wing. Where does that come from?
It has a double meaning, and one of the meanings is from Shakespeare's Hamlet, when Hamlet is trying to convince somebody that he's only a certain degree of crazy. He says, I could still tell a hawk from a heron saw, which is a heron. And so it comes from that. It's about madness, but it's also an allusion to so one of the paintings in the show is derived from this story of an Amish family I know who had to cut down all of the trees on their farm to pay a hospital bill or help pay a hospital bill. Thus the saw and the wing, like the bird that took flight from those trees that were cut. So,
So do you see a little madness in your painting?
I think, well, I've been looking at Goya, too, and of course he painted the things on his living room walls that haunted him, and some of the paintings that are images of his that I return to are like the monsters of the sleep of reason. So that's one of the influences of the show. But yeah, I mean, I think an underlying subject is madness, and in the case of the quagga, it's like this human obsession with a thing that drives it to extinction, and what could that be but madness?
Yeah. Well, so that is a great transition. Let's dive into a couple of the stories behind your specific paintings. So for our listeners, if you don't have a chance to come to the gallery, all of the images can be found on somervillemanning.com. However, I do recommend seeing in person because when they're all hung in the gallery, it is quite breathtaking. So many of your paintings are extremely layered with symbolism and metaphors and history and stories. And so I guess if we can let's start with the Flying Fox trade. What's that one about? So basically, just to give our listeners a visual, it's 5 figures sitting around a table, bird's eye view from the top of their heads, all kind of around this map.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it's named for the pub that Vermeer's father ran in Delft. And I was thinking about that age of discovery, which shaped Europe when people started collecting artifacts and started working on their natural history collections and cabinets of curiosities. So and how that shaped kind of the Europeans' view of the world. And so that was the origin of the painting. It's also somewhat symbolic. It's about people, what may motivate people from the Amish community to leave there, and what sense of curiosity they would have to break ties with home. So on the table is a map, and there are some little symbols in the painting, like a ship of a means to leave.
Very interesting. So also one that I was really curious about that I don't think I've heard the story yet is Paper Leopards After a Peaceable Kingdom by Edward Hicks. So I would hope that a lot of us know the painting Peaceable Kingdom by Hicks. What is the leopard that's coming down into it? It's
a reference to the paper tiger, which is a phrase for something that looks threatening, but that is not, that there's no substance behind. But so in this painting, well, I have some catching up to do. Edward Hicks, I think, did something around 60 versions of Peaceable Kingdom.
Wow.
And I love studying those paintings, and that all the animals in them are defying gravity, and they're just really strangely beautiful compositions. But he also resonates because he was a Pennsylvania painter. But I'm interested in the fates of the individual animals within the painting, many of which are on the verge of extinction now. And so in my version, this is not meant to be peaceable kingdom or a place where all the animals are coexisting in peace and harmony, but is a natural history museum window. So they're all stuffed, and thus the ladder, like somebody had been among them, kind of arranging them, and the paper leopard is hanging from the ceiling.
Well, it's interesting because when I was doing my research for your paintings and the show, I read that the snow leopard, which that really looks like a snow leopard, I don't know if it is or not, as of 2017 is no longer endangered. And so I thought that was a really interesting sublayer of this painting as well.
Happy news.
Yes, exactly. I don't know. And I saw the paper as kind of being this really fragile entity that kind of isn't so fragile now. So there's this other painting called The Invention of Hope. And so it is this girl in this plaid jacket taking a wild boar for a walk, basically, with wings strapped to its back. Can you tell me a little bit about what the inspiration was for that piece?
Yeah, it's somewhat layered in my mind.
As many of your paintings are.
I see her as a protector of the boar, and so she's trying to disguise the boar, but also give him a way to fly off. It's about hope. It's about pigs flying, and I love the symbolism of pigs, and that if domesticated hogs are returned to the wild, or if within a few generations they revert to growing tusks and hair like wild boar.
Really?
I kind of love that as an allegory.
That's amazing. So in a way, she's protecting this pig but now I see it in a totally different way, where she's almost trying to re-domesticate it as well. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, I see pigs as a symbol of possibility. My earliest memory of seeing a painting is seeing Jamie Wyeth's Sow in Brandywine, and I think seeing that painting both made me want to become a painter, but also have a pig one day, and both have come true.
You did get a pig one day?
I did have pigs one day.
Good. I'm so glad. I believe you told me once before, and in a joking way, you said, like everyone in West Virginia, you are related to either the Hatfields or the McCoys in some way. And I think you told me one time that the pigs show up in your work because that's what the feud started over.
That is one of the threads. One of the meanings of the pig. Although it was recently dispelled by an article in Lapham's Quarterly by Jane Phillips. Wrote a wonderful article about the Hatfield and McCoy feud. And so I think we can put to rest the lore of the pig starting the family.
Fair enough. It will live on in infamy. But so there's this other painting right when you walk in on the front wall. It's called Toe the Rope, Sew the Map. And it's this girl in a white dress that has the pattern of a map plastered all over it, separated from a polar bear in its tank by a velvet red rope. So you tell me a little bit about that painting. What's the story behind that one?
One of the seeds of the idea came from the explorer Louise Boyd, who was an Arctic explorer. But it's also about, in the same sense, the quagga is about the quagga being damned because of human curiosity. This girl is standing in front of a captive polar bear tank, and and she has the map on her dress of how she got there.
Interesting. Do you see her as putting the bear there? Or just kind of collateral damage in a way?
I see her as an observer.
Interesting. There's a range of sizes in this show. So everything from a 6-foot long painting, maybe a little bit more.
Felt like more.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. All the way down to some 10 by 10 paintings. So there's one small painting that's 10 by 10 that really got me called Combustion. And so it's this woman in this beautiful dress and jacket playing piano, and there's a fire burning in the piano. What's that?
It's somewhat about what it requires to make work, what you have to burn up and use as fuel to produce something creative.
But in a way, her own source of outlet or creative outlet is being destroyed at the same time.
That too, yeah.
So do you feel, I understand there's all these stories behind your work, but obviously, as people look at them, they kind of have their own stories that they create behind these. How do you feel about that? Is that okay with you? Or would you rather people really understand the meaning behind it?
Yeah, no, it's really rewarding to me, actually, when people come up and say, oh, I saw this in the painting, or this reminds me of this thing. I think paintings can function in a lot of ways, and as important to me as it is to relay a story, it's also, I think, at the same time, a painting can function as a mirror and reflect somebody else's story back to them. And so yeah, the seeds of the ideas behind the paintings I want to sow, but yeah.
Have you ever heard a different interpretation from someone else and had it change the way you look at one of your paintings?
Maybe momentarily, or it's like it's interesting to hear, but I think I've known the paintings so well and I've lived with them for so long that I almost can't see them differently for long anyway. Just trying to...
So how, this I guess should have been a little earlier on, how do you know when a painting is finished? I know that you, it's a hard thing for any artist to kind of grapple with.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have paintings in my studio that I just keep working on, and yeah, I mean, in some cases, there's just such thing as a deadline.
Yeah.
In some cases, there's a magic moment where I feel like they've gelled or like they've come to fruition. And
do you have any stories that you have read recently or heard about or researched that you're just dying to make a painting of? And maybe it hasn't been the right time yet, but it's
yes.
coming. Yeah? What is it?
There's
or do you
plenty
not
of
want to give
material.
anything away? Don't jinx it.
Can't curse a painting. Finding the inspiration is never the problem for me. It's being able to, it's the time to do it.
Interesting. Well, before we finish up, what can our listeners expect from you in the future? So obviously, we just talked about there's many themes coming up that maybe we're not going to jinx right now, but I know you're painting like crazy. You're opening another show in Seattle in December. I'm sure you have some things working in Germany right now. So do you ever take a break?
We'll see. I just keep painting. Part of the work is taking the time to travel and think and observe and draw and read. So that's part of the process, and will be. Great.
Well, thank you again to my wonderful guest, Sarah McRae Morton, whose solo exhibition at Somerville Manning Gallery runs through December 15th. This is Rebecca Moore, and make sure to listen next Wednesday when Rhoda Kaler interviews Mary Galligan of the Art Partners in Coatesville and Darcy Goldberg, artist mentor to the Luke and Steel Project. For past audios of Art Watch Radio, go to lilygaylor.com or Chad's Ford Live. Stay tuned every Wednesday from 1 to 1:30 for Art Watch Radio, and thanks for joining us today on Art Watch on radio station WCHE 1520.